first discussion segment this morning will begin from Benin, where we're going to be reviewing, even as Jamb is planning to review the results from tomorrow. The 2025 UTME results from tomorrow. Jamb is planning to review that. So we, on our program this morning, we're going to be reviewing the results too with some statistical analysis as released by the Joint Admission and Matriculations Board. Well, this morning we're so privileged to have Mr. Peter Okumbowa. Anytime I have him on my program, it's always a delight, it's always a pleasure, because he's the coordinator of Test House Tutorials, aka Gorilla Brains, and of course the proprietor of Cavalry Crown Academy in Edo State. Now, Mr. Peter Okumbowa was also involved in this UTME 2025, preparing candidates for the exam. And feel us reaching, the airspace now. Results are coming in and here and there. And we want to say congratulations to the candidates that sailed through in this examination. Mr. Peter, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. And just good morning.
All right. I remember 2 weeks into the exam, we had you on the program. And of course, we also talked about the preparation so far. Now, our major concern was to look at exceptional cases as it relates to exceptional students. This result, there's no doubt. Jamb has said that it's a massive failure. And we've seen how students and their parents are protesting. In Enugu, about 2-3 days ago, we saw whereby parents had to join their children to protest the failure and all that. But be that as it may, the exceptional cases, the exceptional results that we are seeing, I don't want to ask what is responsible. It's only simple. You prepare well, you get a result well. But let us look at the examination generally, the mass failure. Let's start from there.
Well, the question of the mass failure is quite relative because what you may call failure is the scores in relations to the intending institution and what they accept as their cutoff mark. So for people who are in Edo State, for example, they might consider 180, 170 as failure because most of the school here, they might consider anything 150, 160 as failure because most of the school here place their cutoff mark at University of Benin, for example. The least you score in Jamb to qualify for post-UTME is 200. In Brusale University is 180. In the Auchi Polytechnic is 180. So for people who probably choose Brusale University or Auchi Polytechnic as first choice, 180 is not a failure for them. 190 is not a failure for them. However, what it goes to show is that the admission process will be a lot tougher and steeper. And the question of the mass failure is also relative to states and their consciousness, as it were. I have a tutorial in Rivers State, for example, and this is not to chide the Rivers State education system, but this is to point out an obvious experience I've had. The level of consciousness there as to scoring very high in Jamb is very low. It's almost non-existent because the schools there, their cutoff mark is very funny. Uniport accepts 170. RSU accepts 160.
What do you mean by RSU now?
Rivers State University.
Okay.
Accepts 160. So the young people there don't feel the need to even come to tutorials because it's not competitive at the level of the requirement or the score that will take you in. When you come to a place like Edo, young people attend tutorial classes like they know it's going to be steep and the process is going to be very difficult. If anyone is saying 200 is the basic requirement to come in, that is not in itself a guarantee that you're going to gain the admission. Because whatever you score in the Uniben, in the Jamb, when it comes to the case of University of Benin, they will divide it by 8. So if you score 200 on the dot, hoping that 200 will take you in, that is the minimum requirement. When you divide 200 by 8, what you have is 25 marks. That becomes your astounding. Then what they call the post-UTME exercise, when you partake of it, whatever you score in the screening exercise, they will divide it by 2. Let's say you score 60 over 100. Divided by 2 will give you 30. They will add that 30 to the outstanding 25 that you had from the mathematics they worked at in Jamb. That will give you 25 plus 30, 55. And you want to study engineering, you want to study medicine, you want to study pharmacy, you want to study law. So the competition began even from Jamb. The higher your Jamb score, the better your chances. In DESU, for example, your Jamb results is divided by 8. Your internal exam is divided by 2.
Anyway, let's be cautious with that now, because we don't have DESO authority here. Neither do we have University of Benin.
It's my business
to look as if we are speaking for them.
No, these are not private issues. The universities oblige the public on how they arrive at aggregate scores, so that people don't feel that they've been cheated. In the case of Jamb, now the reason why they protest is that some people don't believe that what they got is what they deserve. So I'm just letting the public know that if you're going to prepare for these schools post-UTME exercise, you have to know what you have on ground and what you are working towards. You get me? In Ambrose Alif University, in the AAU, for example, they do not do post-UTME. They do what they call the screening exercise there. What comes into play there is your Jamb score and your SSC results. So the better your SSC results, the better your chances.
Okay, let's leave that down. Now, on the screen this morning, now, PD, please avail us of that information. On the screen this morning, we have the statistical analysis of the UTME results, and whereby we have, we can have that on the screen now. Please, the PD, we can have that on the screen, the statistical analysis of the UTME results. All right, so on the screen this morning, we have the statistical analysis, Mr. Peter Okumbowa. Now, we have the result that 4,757 candidates made 320 above, and that's only 0.24%. Then, of course, we have 7,658 candidates making between 300 and 319, and that settles at 0.39%. Then 300 above, student candidates, about 12,414, had 300 and above, and that settles for 0.63%. The highest of it all now is in the range of the candidates that scored between 160 and 199. And that puts the record, an alarming record of 983,187. And that settles for about 50.29%. Now, this is where the issue of the mass failure, come, Peter Okungbowa. But for the exceptional results, exceptional cases whereby students are, scoring above 300, above 280 and all that. Now, do you think there were methodology that these candidates employed? Or, because to some candidates, Jamb still remains a magical examination, that maybe you need to perform some magic before you can score very high. I mean, you prepare candidates for this exam. Tell us, what was your experience?
Mr. Evans, the young people we're having these days and society in itself does not in any way place premium on university education no more. Because we're not living in a time where when you graduate, you go and learn a craft from the person who did not go to school to earn a living. So there's not much premium in it. What is more, the social life today is taking the better of these young people. I could remember about 15 years ago, for those of us who wrote Jamb that long ago, where you didn't have the idea of the CBT, where it was on a very cool Saturday, everybody goes to public school, sit down with a pen and paper, type as it were, and write the exams. In those days, you hardly even hear Jamb say one person scored 300 and above in the whole country. Those were the days where the questions were set to type. The questions were given objectively in a way and manner that everybody wrote the same thing, but just different paper type. And in this exam, some people went to the hall and saw repeated questions in Jamb past questions, more than 20, more than 40 in some cases. In the era where Jamb actually has no new question to set, I don't expect this kind of fail rates. What this goes to show is society and where it's going towards in terms of the consciousness of young people in relation to their university education. It's dying by the day, if you ask me. And for us, we kept telling young persons, from 1973 to date, Jamb hardly have changed curriculum. There is nothing you find in CRS today that will tell you that the number of disciples that Christ had turned from 12 to 15.
12 to 15.
It's going to be that, and it's going to be that. In physics, there are some questions that cannot change. So long as that topic is still there, there are some questions that must come out. Except they're not going to touch that topic. In chemistry, same applies. Except they're not going to touch it, because there are no new curriculum since 1973 as such. There's been a dilution here and there. The dilutions may come in the case of maths, introduction of about 3 topics. In the case of physics, about introduction about 2 topics. In chemistry, there's an infusion about 2 topics. And in biology, there's an infusion of about 2 topics. This area itself is not even enough to account for these fail rates. Because what it simply means is that the millions of people writing the exam are not all going to be asked questions from these new topics, these few new topics that have been added. It still remains that there is a methodology to passing Jamb. I know this so well that you don't have to be academically smart to even pass Jamb today.
So what is that methodology?
Oh, I keep it a trade secret to myself. I am a craftsman in this regard. But if I have to educate the public, I have you understand that I've just given you an expo. So long as there's no new topic, their past questions remains invaluable. Some of the results we have to celebrate at our end. When you look at the subjects, it was deliberate. Physics, for example, we had numerous 98 of 100 in physics.
That's from Gorilla Brains.
Yes.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah. We had 80 something, numerous of them. That's because while we were on this endeavor, we knew physics will always be the challenge of an average science student. So we had a special program dedicated to physics. It was called the Physics Conference. It was attended by people from far and wide. They all came to a location of the branches we have. They came to a particular location where there was this concerted effort and this psychological rebuilding of, hey, you cannot escape this, you cannot escape this, you cannot escape it. Away from the normal class tradition, as it were. That's how we got those staggering figures in physics. In chemistry, it was also deliberate because there was a special effort dedicated towards that. Because I have to understand something. As smart as our young people are today, they are also very easily distracted, no thanks to social media. In the times when these exams were ongoing, I can tell you that most of these fail rates, as it were, go on, if you can get to the individuals involved, you'll see that 99.9% of them are people who are more or less social catalysts. Because there are 2 things you cannot carry along the same breath. You cannot be academically inclined and be a social catalyst and don't expect one to suffer. And at the level of being a social catalyst, the learnings appeal to you more and now resort to distractions. Why, when it comes to the intellectual acquisition, it takes calmness. It takes an intentional effort on your part. It takes dedication for you to break the ice of understanding these things you are reading. It comes to a point where when you have broken even the ice of understanding these things, they now come to you effortlessly. But this is a painstaking process. It may take you months to get to a point where understanding now comes easily to you. You remember when we were in secondary school, sir, that during the break, because of the long break, we went and left our books. When we resumed school, not until they announced the first tests, reading and assimilation became a problem. Getting back to form was a challenge. But for those who appreciated it earlier, when it came for first test, they sailed better than those who appreciated it later. But in the second test, you saw those who probably failed in the first test waking up to the occasion. It's also there in sports, in football. Not all players are in their form, even though they are good. It takes persistency, consistency for a player to be in form. A player may be so wonderful, and there are psychological things that have happened in his family. Probably just lost his father, or he lost his child. He will lose bearing. So this loss of bearing is occasioned by the activities of these young people on social media. If the NCC shows you the data that is being bound in this country on a daily, just understand that 80% of them is from young people.
All right. So, I was on a program on Sunday, and of course, a radio SMS program, a series of SMS coming through, and one particular caught my interest. The candidates was being celebrated on that program, scoring about 62 or 68. That happens to be from Gorilla Brains. That's from your lecture center. Exceptional case now. 368, whereby complaints, massive complaint that people, I just read the statistical analysis, out a while ago. Now, the attention here is for some candidate, they still don't believe, that, look, this thing is real. They think that, wow, it's made up of and all that. Now, Jamb is going to start reviewing the performance of the UTME from tomorrow, Thursday. So what would you say about exceptional cases, the preparation, and for those that, may not have passed in this exam?
If you are going to extrapolate the scores of exceptional results in this case, people like us don't have a problem with what you are doing is to create confidence in the public that what you did and how you arrive at such scores was an open policy. And that versus how some persons got very poor scores is also an open policy. For me, 300 and above, I always told candidates, this exam is over 400 in case you are forgetting. So if you score 300, you have failed 100. If you score 350, you have failed 50. What is more, apart from 2006, all Jamb questions from question 1 to 25 are drawn from SSS1 workload, apart from 206.
Is that what you teach your candidates?
Yes.
From SS1?
And the empirical analysis to show. Go through their past questions and see for yourself. Question 1 to 25 are drawn from SSS1. It is from question 26 and above, you now start getting an admixture of SS2 and SS3 workload. The point is that most of them who are writing Jamb have left SS1 workload a long time ago. Don't even think there is need to go back.
So are you trying to say that it is probably intentional from Jamb? I mean, truth be told,
it's an O-level curriculum.
A candidate that would have finished SSC,
it's an O-level curriculum.
May not want to go back to SS1.
It may be a strategy, but it's an O-level curriculum. By that, it means that it's all-encompassing, not divorcing it of SS1 workload or SS2 workload because you're in SSS3. If you want to put a doubt to those who score 300 and above, then you will shine your spotlight on people like us because we produced an exceptional number. So far, we've garnered more than 400 who have scored 300 and above. Yeah. Your own son scored 340.
Well, let's not do that now. Yeah, but
and he got through a process that brought out the best in him. You just have to understand that young persons could do this, but there is a methodology to it. The methodology to it may not be available to a scholar who is academically perhaps even better in theory than him. Objective questions. Their approach to objective questions that are not the same with an approach to theoretical exams. It's a lot easier to pass a theoretical exam than to pass an objective exam.
Oh, really?
Yes. In a theoretical exam, for example, you are writing according to script. You're not going to write verbosely. And if you do not have the idea, you may write off points, as it were. For long essays, you have to make the sense that will be accommodated in the marking scheme. Else, all that you have written, all the 3 different pages you asked extra pages for, may amount to off points. But when it comes to an objective exam, the challenge here is that in a theoretical exam, you cannot write and score 0 over in a particular question asked. Except it didn't make any sense.
Yeah, for making an attempt at all.
So when you dance around the question, so long as you are dancing around what is required or what is noted in the marking scheme, you will get 1 mark, 2 marks for efforts. But you see an objective exam. If you failed one particular one, there is no makeup for that particular one, it's gone. The psychology, however, in an objective exam is that I tell candidates, the answer is there looking at you. You have to identify amongst these 4 which is the answer. I teach you the elimination method, not to waste your time. Because of these 4, there are 2 that are write-offs. There are other 2 that are nearness to each other, verisimilitudes. The one that is closest to the answer is to make you get the answer wrong. So you have to employ second strategy, precision.
So this is the methodology that Jamb uses.
It's just a let me say this is my methodology for teaching. I don't know what methodology they use for setting their questions. But like I've said earlier, their questions are O-level based. Jamb has never set any question that is A-level. In 206, however, when you looked at the questions that were in question 1 to 25, those were the questions that used to be in question 26 and 26 down in other exams that they've written, the tough ones. So they introduced 206 with the tough ones and continued in the line of those tough ones. People who wrote Jamb exams in 206, even scholars, had terrible results. Because from the beginning, it was strength on the part of Jamb. To the end, they maintained their strength. Those were the same strategy they employed when we were writing Jamb, when all questions were not easy, when all questions were actually the true tests of your knowledge, of what you've been through, as it were. That's why I said something. No thanks to social media. No young person has any excuse to fail this Jamb in the proportion they have. And if you look at it carefully, sir, you will see that Edo State is not actually that much affected. When you let Jamb do their review. Like last year when they seized Edo State, Edo South results for review. Why? The performance was too high. They had to go do a review of it. That may happen again. Because Edo State so far, they have lots of cases of 100 and something. But it's not so bad. Like the 6 states wherein malpractice have been said to have taken place, highest being Anambra followed by Lagos.
Yeah, some results are seized.
Yes. Then when you look at other states that I don't want to mention from the north and from some part of the south, like Rivers State and some part of Delta, you see that Edo has been on the vanguard at producing incredibly good results for the past 10 years. Since Jamb turned CBT, Edo has been producing very incredible results. That's why our admissions are still not easy.
Okay, beautiful. We'll pause you because the discussion is getting more heated here. So we'll pause you. Don't forget the program is still this morning on ITV. And our guest this morning is Mr. Peter Okumbowa, the coordinator of Test House Tutorials Gorilla Brain. So we are doing a statistical analysis of the just released UTME 2025 UTME results. We'll be right back. Please stay tuned. All right, thank you one more time. The program is still right here. Yeah, we're still reviewing the statistical analysis of the 2025 UTME results, and Mr. Peter Okumbowa is right here. Now, Peter, so many reasons to want to allude to why some candidate performed poorly. I mean, somebody said that fear, fear of even failing the exam alone is enough reason to fail the result. Why some say that inexperience and all that. Now, we're looking at, the state by state. You were trying to make an allusion between Edo State and other states, that Edo State performed, well compared to other states. Now, I think that may not be far-fetched. I mean, if you talk about ICT compliance today, social media compliance today, I think our youths are more compared to other states. Don't you think so?
Well, I'm trying to understand what you mean when you say that.
There are more social media, compliance.
That cuts across states. I do not think that in terms of population, Lagos is far more than Edo. And so you have more young people there who are more into social media than Edo. Lagos also always raised the banner, as it were. I think that, if I'm not wrong, the highest in this may even come from Lagos. Or if you check the number of 300 and above now, which is now more than 12,000, from 300 and above to the highest, you'll be amazed that the larger number came from Lagos. What I'm trying to say is that Edo rose up to the occasion because of our higher institution here and the premium placed on admissions, as it were. That's what is working for Lagos too. Getting into the higher institutions there is like you have to just be at the top of your game and all of that. States where this consciousness isn't really there, have young people at limbo. And that's why when such young people from such states want to apply to other states that are academically very challenging, they always have problems. So the most exceptional student from such a state applying to study in a place like Unilag or Unipen may have a problem because you're going to be meeting a pool of people who have done way better than you. I mean, the average here could even best you. That is about the best from such states where there are no such consciousness, as it were. My point still remains that I do not understand why the person who said fear is why this performance could have been when they had months, a year in some cases
No, it's natural. I
to
mean,
prepare.
examination is natural. I
No,
mean,
sir. Somebody said failure to plan is planning to fail.
no, but you cannot compare the candidates that wrote this exam. Most of them, they were under 18. So there's no way you can compare them with when you and I wrote. We were above 20, when we sat for that
I
exam.
wrote my jam when I was 17 plus.
Okay,
The
lucky
point
you.
of the matter is that majority of them who wrote this exam are not underaged. They are not. Somebody said fear. I said no. I said on seriousness.
When I say fear as orchestrated by inexperience, some form of level of, immaturity.
According to the statistics you saw there, majority of people who took this exam were not greenhorns. They had written it before. The problem is that we are the one that see them in the course of their preparation. It's on seriousness. Society has its own role to play in that. When you see students, there are some students you just look forward to seeing their results. You know these ones that are the front seats. These ones are never absent from class. These ones don't loiter around. They don't come and leave.
Yeah, but we're talking about on the day of the exam itself. Is
Those who purge such fears only were owing up to reality checks. The reality check is that today the works of my hands shall manifest. Those who have been reading and studying, if you observe them, the men have been in the majority, probably why you didn't observe them. They were calm enough to go in and see what it's going to be like. They've studied their past questions. They've been under intense tutelage. They've studied, they burned the midnight candle. They just calmed themselves in one corner, waiting to see what it's going to be like. For the one who knows that he or she has been essentially playing away, on the day of reckoning, what do you expect psychologically? Fear.
Okay. All right, so from tomorrow, Jamb is going to start reviewing the results and see what happened, what did not happen, and all that. Now, we understand that in some states, like in Enugu, the issue of connectivity, the glitches during the process of the exam, candidates are posting, submitting their answers, not getting through and all that. Now, what would you say about that? I think Jamb itself needs to look at all this as they review the results tomorrow.
I hope they do, because they've already marshaled out ways to make sure those people write again. In fact, Jamb has opened a URL for their re-registration and, of course, a date to write the exam. It's pretty easy for them to detect such, because at the back end of the server, you'll see that out of 4 subjects, maybe 2 was done within a time frame that would support the idea or the narration that this person's system switched off. But what I would like the technical part of the technical Jamb to do is to upgrade. I mean, I don't know why, if my system shuts down, why I couldn't just plug it again and continue from where I left off. Because there was a student of mine, a very brainy girl, who came back crying. What was her issue? She was writing, and a girl who stood up to ease herself, walking past where she was, just her leg got to contact with the plug
the system went
of
off.
the system,
Wow.
and the system just went off.
Wow.
I do not even understand why the system should go off when Jamb said it's a laptop and not a desktop. Every laptop should have preservation of battery, not tripping off. So what goes to show is that some of the CBT centers have systems that are laptops but as good as desktop.
I think that's where the owners of CBT centers now, because this CBT exam we're talking about now, it is still being contracted out. You know, most centers are owned by private owners and all that. So I think what Jamb should also look at is to see how prepared you are. I mean, if you don't have any standard form of uninterrupted power supply, you should not be accredited for such exam.
I think in most of these cases, like I just mentioned, the case is not, in some cases, it's not a case of power outage. No, it's not a case of power outage. We know where power outage became an issue, occasioned by generator. Jamb would not allow you as a CBT operator to depend on BEDC or whatever energy supply you get. Even though you tell them it's 100% constant, they don't take chances with it. So you must run on at least a 160 kVA generator, approved to run the certain number of laptops that is supposed to write the exam. So if the generator develops a fault in a moment, of course it's a machine, anything could go wrong with its internal mechanism. At any time the generator developed a fault, vis-a-vis when the exam was going on, the system ought not to submit itself so long as it's a laptop. The battery of the laptop should be able to keep the system running until, if there is a need for an immediate startup or a backup generator to come up, in most of these cases is that some of the laptops don't even have batteries in them. They are plugged directly to generator.
Yeah.
So when there's a trip off, like in the case of this guy telling you about, if the battery of the laptop was working, will the system shut down?
It won't.
That's to tell you that either the battery was dead or it had no battery to it. This, for me, should be part of the review that Jamb should do, wherein that the system that is to be approved for this in the CBT center, for example, should be allowed to work for at least 30 minutes without energy to see if they can.
The whole exam was just 2 hours.
What I'm saying, the 30 minutes is just good enough to switch to another generator set. If there's a fault occasioned by unforeseen circumstance in the generator that is primarily running the center, I think another review they do is that for you to have a CBT, for you to be licensed, you must have a backup generator.
Okay. Now, let me ask this question because, you know, some of our kids, they are computer wizards. Now, I heard that, no, Daddy, you could pause the time. You know, we rely on information a lot. Now, you can pause the time while you do your thinking. Why some other candidate probably did not know that you could pause the time. You know, a 2 hours examination, a lot of candidates had time issue with that.
Because they couldn't pause it.
Is it true? You are experiencing this field now. Is it true, and how correct is that as the exam went on, that some candidates could actually pause the time on the CBT?
I wasn't sitting on the system to know or can give veracity to this. But what I know is that Jamb changes interface year to year. I mean, there was a year when you couldn't, haven't gone through a question, you couldn't review, you couldn't rewind it. You couldn't go forward and go back. You just have to go forward. I haven't done this. So if you want to check if you made a mistake in the question you had just attempted, you couldn't go back.
With the use of the mouse, you could do that. You could flip up and down.
It was not on the interface of the exam in the first time they came up. So you just be sure what you're doing, forward to the next question. You couldn't go back to do a review. But they also evolved from that. So if Jamb had evolved to a point where you could pause the timer, I would say that for me would be a new one, because if it's a general time that has been given for the exam to be written, if you paused your own time, if you could pause your own system, it means that you could buy extra time.
But that may not be correct, because the whole examination is timed. You could pause your own time. It doesn't mean that it will be at your own expense. I mean, because what I know about those computer systems is that at 2 hours, the whole thing shuts down. And one good thing about it is that at the completion of that 2 hours, it shut down, then all answers are automatically submitted.
Like I said earlier, I wasn't there to write the exam. I don't know exactly what kind of interface they had. If this was possible, then it's also true, it also could be true, as you have said, that whether you pause it or not, when it's time for the exam to end completely, the system will shut itself down. That could be it.
Okay. All right. So one last one. What is the message now? Because this is probably the very first stage of the university journey. Most of these candidates now are sitting for their WAEC examination as we speak. And after that, tertiary institutions are going to come up with the post-UTME. And at Gorilla Brains, I know that you guys are still ready to do the needful. Now, what would you say to candidates that are sitting for a WAEC exam now, that passed the Jamb, and they're looking forward to the post-UTME?
We've seen cases of candidates who passed their Jamb, passed their post-UTME. They were given admission. When WAEC result came out, 1 or 2 papers was why they couldn't do clearance. So to those who are writing WAEC, cross your teeth, dot your eyes, because the success you've recorded so far can be spotted by that WAEC, the outcome of that WAEC. And so young people, they will be typical. Young people will not come to class until these schools start selling post-UTME form. Tell them early preparation is key. You're on your own. What is more, some parents also have other agendas. Okay, before the exam, go and learn XYZ craft, forgetting that this is a marathon. And for this reason, the momentum should be sustained. What is more, for universities like University of Benin, your subjects are going to be more than the ones you wrote in your Jamb. So these new added subjects, in most cases 2 added subjects, why don't you start the learning now? So the only advice I have for young people and their parents is, whatever makes you happy, do. If you think early preparation is key, go ahead. If you think being an 11th hour worker will also work for you, go ahead. Whatever works for you, it's fine. I'm tired of advising young people. When you advise them to do the right thing, they'll do the exact opposite. So our doors are open. It's been open on Monday, and the number of persons there are in some cases just me. And some few
It's
people.
okay. You're not paying for this interview, so we'll let you that. So I want to say very big thank you, Mr. Peter Okumbawa. Always
Thank you
a
very
pleasure
much,
to
Mr.
have you on our
Evans, for having
program
me.
anytime. And we've been reviewing the statistical analysis of the just released UTME 2025 results. And from tomorrow, Thursday, Jamb is going to start reviewing the performance of candidates, the mass failure of the examination and see how they can improve. Because the next Jamb now is going to be in 2026. That will be next year. So the preparation starts now. So as a parent and as a child out there, as a student, as a candidate, you want to smile next year. So you start the preparation now. Even as Jamb start reviewing, there are hitches, there are glitches and areas that they need to improve upon as the next result comes up next year. All right, so we'll take a short pause now.